When major cities lose thousands upon thousands of people, the many buildings that were once occupied by these populations can often end up abandoned, and in some cases very large skyscrapers end up completely vacated. And in this video we will go over a few of them. These are 4 of the most vacated skyscrapers in America. First we go to New Orleans, Louisiana, with the Plaza Tower at 531 feet tall and 485,000 square feet of vacant space. This tower would be built throughout the 1960s and would open in 1969. It would have a lengthy service life of roughly 3 decades, towering as one of the city's tallest buildings. By 2002, however, it began to show its age, with asbestos and mold becoming major issues within. The building closed that year and has sat abandoned ever since. For over 20 years now, a barrage of ideas, plans, and a historical designation have extended this building's life. Despite the mold and asbestos issues and the building losing over 90% of its value from 2005 to 2011, it was given a historic designation in 2013. It has continued to deteriorate so much that it has literally began to fall apart, with pieces of the building falling to the ground. Finally, in 2024, it was decided that the building would be torn down, and that it would cost $2.7 million just to stabilize the building and set it up to be demolished, completely separate from an additional $28 million to actually tear down the building. In 2025, with demolition plans seeming imminent, redevelopment plans are again being floated around. An eyesore that at this point is anything but historic. It remains to be seen what happens to or how much longer this tower lasts. Next we move up the Mississippi River to St. Louis's 909 Chestnut Street. This building stands 588 feet tall and is just a few feet short of being St. Louis's tallest building. And it boasts nearly 1.5 million square feet of vacant space. Built in the mid-1980s, it is newer than that of the Plaza, but after roughly 3 decades of use, it would be vacated in 2017. It is now considered abandoned and no doubt is a victim of the city's major population losses over the years. In fact, just since 1980, not long before this tower opened, St. Louis has lost just under 40% of its population. Combine that with the work-from-home phenomenon of the 2020s, it no doubt makes the property unattractive for redevelopment, especially given its size. To put it into perspective, this tower's vacant square footage is so large it is larger than that of 8 Walmart supercenters or 10 Costco warehouses. From 2006 to 2024, this building lost so much value it went from a selling price of $205 million down to $3.6 million. It is often discussed in redevelopment plans, but given that St. Louis is still losing population at a relatively high rate, losing 7.3% in the 2020s alone, it is quite questionable how much demand there actually would be for such a large skyscraper, be it for business or residential purposes. Next we have the 5th tallest building in the city of Memphis, Tennessee, and that is the Sterk Building, which stands 365 feet tall and has 340,000 square feet of vacant space. Opening in 1930, this skyscraper would struggle early on, as unfortunately during its construction and early years of existence, the country would be in the midst of the crash of '29 and the Great Depression. In fact, after only 2 years from its opening, the building lost roughly half its value. However, by the 1950s, the building would be nearly fully filled with tenants and would sell in 1957 at a relatively reasonable price at the time of $3.85 million. By the 1960s, however, the building began to show its age, losing out in tenants and interest to more recent construction, both nearby and in the suburbs. By the 1970s, it again had lost roughly half its value. Throughout the 70s and into the mid-80s, the building deteriorated and vacancy soared until in 1986, the building was empty. It has been empty for nearly 40 years, and while there are plans by the current owner to redevelop it, it is estimated that it would cost $100 million to do so. Given that Memphis currently has a stagnant and slowly declining population, one must wonder if there really is the demand for such a large structure to be redeveloped. Finally, we have the Rockefeller Building in Cleveland, Ohio, at 212 feet tall and 304,586 square feet of vacant space. This building was completed in 1905 and was developed and financed by John D. Rockefeller, though the entrepreneur himself had little to do with the building after it was built. It would house a variety of businesses during its time and was in use until 2020, when its last tenants were vacated for a planned renovation. Unfortunately, this would never happen though, as the owner, after spending over $13 million for the building, would run into financing issues for the renovation. And since the building has declined from a standing but not operating state to an outright abandoned and blighted one. It is believed that it would cost $130 million to redevelop, a major barrier keeping anything from actually happening to this building. In these clips, we will take a closer look. So here we have the Rockefeller Building. Still has a sign on there, but if you look close at the windows, you can tell quite quickly that it is an abandoned skyscraper. We'll get a closer look in the coming clips here. So getting up close to the building here, you can see the original sign, I presume, from it. And the main entrance is completely bricked off by cinder blocks. They put banners all over the boards to try to hide the fact that this is an abandoned building, but if you look closely, you can tell. So looking at the back, you can see what was the parking garage for this building. And if you see the back looks a lot rougher in shape. You see the broken windows and the building just looks dirty. On this side, nearly every window is broken down the middle right there. And the weird thing is, even though there's no demand to redevelop this, an entire brand new skyscraper was built right next door. So there is demand for real estate in Cleveland, just not old buildings that cost an incredible amount of money to redevelop. The loss of this skyscraper is no doubt a reflection of Cleveland losing roughly 60% of its population since 1950. Cleveland's losses have slowed but not stopped. However, there has been new construction downtown, so it's not as if there's no demand for space there. The common theme with all of these is that they are in cities that have lost massive amounts of population in recent decades. Given the massive hurdles there are into tearing down or redeveloping these buildings has left them there to stay, at least for now. Thank you for watching.